Hi everyone, today you're going to have a look at this Asus Tuf Gaming B850M Plus Wi-Fi. I'd like to thank Asus Singapore to have provided this unit for me to share with everybody. You'll be provided with a quick start guide where it shows you the layout of the motherboard and the basic instructions on how you remove off the M.2s and such. A leaflet regarding about the Asus web storage, a leaflet of stickers, 2 bags of M.2 rubber studs, there are a total of 3, a M.2 standoff and the screw, a bag of SATA cables where you have one which is right angle, the other which is straight, and the Wi-Fi antenna where this is swivelable, and at this base this is magnetic. And of course, the main motherboard itself. Now this is an M-ATX motherboard where it has a measurement from here to here and from here to here is of 244mm. And the thickness of the side VRM and the rear VRM heatsink, this is at 35mm and this is at 45mm. The construction of this motherboard is of 8-layer PCB and the copper trace is of 2 ounce. The power phase of this motherboard is 14 plus 2 plus 1 and 80 M each. If you do total up all the power phases, it is more than enough to cater a high-end AMD processor. At the center, this is the 1718 socket where it supports AMD processor of 7000 series, 8000 series and 9000 series. At the bottom, there are a total of 4 DIMM slots. This support only DDR5 and have a max capacity of 192 gig. It runs in dual channel and with a max expo profile of 8000. There are a total of 2 PCI-E slots where you have the top slot. This is Gen 5 and it's always at X16 and is backward compatible. And this slot is controlled by the processor. At the bottom, this is Gen 4 at X1 and this is controlled by the chipset. There are a total of 3 M.2, which is 1, 2 and 3, where the first 2 are controlled by the processor. The first slot over here is Gen 5, is backward compatible. The second slot is Gen 4, which is also backward compatible if you want to place a Gen 3. And the last one, this is controlled by the chipset and this is Gen 4 2. Now, of all the speed and lanes that I've talked about, there are no lane sharing and such, so no compromises and such if you to populate any of the slots, be it the PCI-E slot or the M.2. Asus has always been very innovative on how they design the release mechanism on the GPU slot, which is the top PCI-E slot. As you can see, right, they have removed off the front latch, which is right in front of the PCI-E slot. Instead, they have done this mechanism. So when you slot your graphic card in, this will lock in place. And if you want to release, right, all is needed is just to press this, hold on it. See, this will release. Then you can just pull out your graphic card. Well done. Now for this board, sad to say that all the M.2 armor shield or the heatsink, it doesn't have a quick release latch. So you will need to unscrew all these screws over here. There are a total of 2 at the top, and at the bottom, slot 2 and slot 3, right, you have 3 screws. So you need to unscrew them, then remove off. And right underneath the armor shield itself, there is this thermal pad. Same goes to the bottom section, where you remove these 3 screws. And all these screws, while you're removing, right, you don't have to worry that it will go missing. Reason being, right, they are captive. See? Same goes to the top. And again, on the bottom armor shield, right, you have 2 padding, which is meant for your M.2 slot 2 and 3. Now, to plug the M.2 to these slots over here is pretty straightforward. All is needed is just to plug this in, and they have this Q latch at the back. Press it down, put it in place, and this is locked. If you want to release, just press it down and this is release, and you can just remove off. Now if you are using a double-sided chip M.2, this will be just nice, as in like the cushion of the M.2 rubber stud is just nice, so that when you place the armor shield back, right, okay, assuming this, right, you will press against the thermal pad. In the event if you're only using a single side chip, okay, this is double-sided, so imagine that below you don't have any chip, okay, just at the top. When you place this in, right, there are not enough support. So what Asus have done, they provide you with this rubber studs, the M.2 studs, where I show you the two package. I tear off one. So what you need to do, right, this protruding out should face bottom, and you align to this, so it gives more support. Okay, it elevates up. Okay, just to show you, see, this is for double-sided chip M.2. If you're using single-sided, right, just place this in, and this will elevate up and gives more support to the M.2, so that it will touch the thermal pad. Now, besides this, I'd like to talk about something for some of them. Some of the PC builders that I've watched when they are removing the screws on the M.2. Now, often when they mount, right, their system, their motherboard on the PC itself to screw the standoffs and such, right, you are using this fiddly head, which is rather big. They have often used this again, okay, to unscrew this, and this is rather big, and sometimes it's too big, right? You might even wear out the screw thread, the screw slot. So some of them have actually damaged this. I would advise that if you want to take out, for majority of the M.2, be it this motherboard or any other motherboards, right, that has the screw on instead of the releasing latch, change your bit to a smaller Philip head. Okay, as you can see over here, so that you have a firm grip to the screws, so that you will not slip. And to blunt the screws, once you blunt this, right, it's going to be very difficult to unscrew and to screw. So this is something for you guys to take note. The audio of this board is making use of a Realtek ALC 1220p 7.1 channel audio codec. As for the connection, this header over here is meant for your front I/O, headphone and microphone jack. Right at the top, you have this 4 pin. To the extreme left, this 2 pin are the CMOS pin, or should I say clear CMOS pin. For this two, I wouldn't have a clue what this is, I will skip. Next, you have a 4 pin PWM fan connector, a COM port, 2 USB port where one of the port is in full, the other port you only have 4 pin, but you still can use this as a USB port. Next will be the front connectors for your power switch, reset switch, hard disk LED and the power LED. Right at the front, you have a right angle, total of 4 SATA port. Now, as mentioned to you, if you were to populate all the PCI-E slot or the M.2 slot, all the speed that is specific to all these lanes and slots, right, they will stay intact. Same goes to the SATA. Next, you have the 3.0 socket, which is meant for your front USB Type A port. And this is a Type C socket where you plug your front USB Type C port, connector to this port. And this is running at a speed of 10 gig. Next, you have a 24 pin socket where you plug your PSU 24 pin cable to this to supply power to the rest of the component on your motherboard. You have a total of 3 pin 5V ARGB connector. That's good. At the top, you have 3 4-pin PWM fan connectors. If you are using a liquid AIO, make sure you connect the pump to this header. This is known as the AIO underscore pump. And why do you plug it to here? Because this AIO underscore pump is providing consistent amperage or stronger amperage so that your pump will run consistently without the drop of current. So take note on that. Now at the front you have the CPU fan, and at the bottom you have the CPU op. At all times, be it your liquid AIO radiator fans or the air cooler fans, make sure you connect to the CPU fan. Because CPU fan, you can control the RPM doing the fan curve on UEFI. Else for the CPU op, you can't do that. So make sure you connect either the air cooler fans or the liquid AIO radiator fans to the CPU fan and not the CPU op. In the event, if you want to do a push-pull configuration, let's say a liquid AIO which is 360, the first 3 fans connect to CPU fan, which you can do the fan curve, then on the other set plug it to the CPU op, whereby the CPU op will follow the instruction of what you have set on CPU fan, so that both sets of fans, right, will sync up and to run at whatever RPM you have done in UEFI. So this will not cause any damage to the fan from running different RPMs. Now at this end over here, there are 2 8-pin EPS connector, whereby you only require to plug one to supply power even if you are running a high-end processor. Unless you are doing extreme overclocking, then plug 2, where you need more vCore to the processor. Things like you're playing with liquid nitrogen overclocking, yes, then you plug 2. Now you might have the question that, hey Kleo, what about if I don't overclock? Can I plug both? Yes, you can, but I don't think it's necessary. Just plug one will do. But if you choose to, want it to look neat, you want to plug 2, of course you can, no problem. At the rear, this 2 port is making use of the integrated graphic that's built in your processor. This is the display port at version 1.4 and is able to project up to 8K 30Hz. At the bottom is the HDMI port, whereby it's version 2.1 and is capable to project up to 4K 60Hz. There are plenty of USB Type A port, total 11. Starting off from the back, this is version 2, and the green ones are version 3 at generation 2, having the capability to transfer at 10 gig. And over at the blue section, this is version 3 and generation 1, having the capability to transfer at 5 gig. This is the Type C port, whereby it's version 3 generation 2 times 2, and it has a transfer rate of 20 gig as compared to the front I/O that is 10 gig. A RJ45 socket where you make use of the Realtek 2.5 gig Ethernet. This section over here is the Wi-Fi 6E socket, and it does support Bluetooth at version 5.3. And these are all the audio socket, whereby I mentioned to you it supports 7.1 channel. This is for you to plug to your subwoofer. This is for your rear speaker. This is meant for line in, and this is for your front speaker, followed by the microphone in. Now this button over here is known as the BIOS flashback, and you will make use of this when you plug the firmware or thumb drive at this allocated square highlighted USB Type A port. So when you plug the firmware over here, right, then you'll be able to use this BIOS flashback button. Now on the antenna connection to this 2 socket is pretty straightforward. So this is the antenna. In traditional way it's screw in, but this, right, all is needed is just to plug in. See, it's that easy. And to remove, just to pull it out. It's very straightforward. This section I will show you the memory train time for the very first time, and I'll talk about it, what I mean by memory train time. Now on my left, this is where you see a black screen, and it's connected to this motherboard itself. So when you boot up to UEFI, right, it will show. And right in the middle, I have deliberately placed a stopwatch. So once I jump start this and we see the light, this is where the stopwatch will start, and see how long it takes to boot to UEFI. So here I'm just going to prepare, and I'm just going to jump start. Now, reason to show you this, right? Some of you who are from an older platform, let's say the AM3 or AM4, right? When you jump to the AM5 platform, you will face this and you might panic. So I'm just sharing with you what happened. This is part of the characteristic of all AM5 platform. So do not worry if your system does not boot up on the screen. Let it sit and let it run. Right now, what the system is doing, right? As you can see, the debug LED is in amber. It will stay there for some time, and it's going to train your memory, as in like recognize your memory, verifying it, then pulling out all the profiles that is within the memory itself. As you can see, right, as I talk, it takes some time, but this will only happen for the very first time when you set up your system and to boot up. Then once it gone through the stage whereby it posts the UEFI, right, the next time when you boot up, be it a cold boot, that means to say when you shut down, when you do a cold boot, or you restart, it will be very fast, which I will illustrate to you again later. So right now it's actually still doing a training. As you can see, the stopwatch is at 1 minute 19 seconds. So it's going to take some time. Sometimes it can be 3 minutes, sometimes it can be 4 minutes, depend on your RAM module. The bigger capacity that you place inside, the longer you take. Take for example, right now I'm using a 32 gig kit King Bang RAM, and it's going to take a fair bit. So if you were to put 64, 96 and such, right, it would take a much more longer time. Probably I would say max, I've tried, it's up to 7 to 8 minutes. So don't be alert when it doesn't boot up to your screen. See, as I talk right now, it's 1 minute 58 seconds. In such timing, right, I would advise you to go have a coffee, or take a break, take a snack, and to come back. All right, I believe right now it should cycle. It's about there. So just have to be patient. See, right now it's cycle. So right now they have verified the RAMs and it's in white, which is good. Then you will start to boot up in no time. See, it boot up, and it took 2 minutes 31 seconds. Okay, let me take you to the UEFI. This is weird, it doesn't react. How come? Okay, so sorry about that, my keyboard having some issue. Now, as you can see, it took you to UEFI right now. This is done. Okay, the first completion of verifying the RAMs and such. So right now I'm just going to turn it off. Okay, I'm going to reset this. Again, I'm going to jump start and see how long it takes. Okay, turn it back on. So right now I'm just going to jump start and you'll see how long it takes. So as mentioned, for the very first time, right, it will take a longer time. But once you've done that, right, the second pass, you will see that it will boot up in no time. And it's taking lesser time to boot to UEFI. See? It boots up. I would say about 18 seconds, so sorry about that. Okay, about 20 seconds. I didn't wait for it to boot fully on UEFI and I stopped. So this is the timing whereby you've already bypassed the first RAM training timing for the very first time. This is the interface of the UEFI, known as the easy mode. Now you can either use your mouse to select things like languages and such, or setting the time and such, or you can make use of the keyboard. I personally would like to use the keyboard. So wherever it's highlighted, as you can see over here, let's say you want to set the time, you just click on here and you can set the time, date, and the time. Now going through briefly on what you see on the easy mode. As you can see over here, the information of the motherboard, the BIOS version, the processor that you're using, and the RAMs that is being populated. I'm using a 32 gig kit which populate 2 DIMM slot. Then for the expo profile, you can set it to enable, which will pull the profile. Right now, I'm just going to set it back to disable, as I'm going to show you the advanced mode. Now at the fan profile, this is where it shows you what are the fans is being plugged to the fan headers. At the moment, I only have a air cooler, which that's why you have this CPU fan running with the RPMs. Now over at this center section over here, where you see the temperature, this is for your processor, then followed by the core voltage that is running on or drawing, and the motherboard temperature. Over here, the storage, in fact, if you were to populate any SATA or M.2, right, it will list over here. For illustration purposes, I plug into USB device so I can show you what is the boot priority. Then over at this section, this is the fan curve that is being set on CPU fan header. And to control in that, you can just click on Q fan control and you can set accordingly to your fan curve. So you might want to do, or you might want to select the profile, silent, turbo, full, and such. Okay, I'm not going to go in depth. This you can set from here. Now over on the right hand side where you say easy system tuning, now this is at normal, that means it's at default. If you want the system and not doing manual overclocking, right, you can just set it to turbo or enhance, sorry, PVO enhance. So this will definitely pull the enhanced features whereby your system will run faster instead of running it by default. Now next will be boot priority. As mentioned to you, I have not populated any M.2 slot, or should I say M.2 storage. So this is just an indication. For example, this, alright, is making use of the Windows OS, and the second one, which is Viber Team, is making use of Linux. If you want to boot by default Linux instead of Windows, you can just drag this up. So having the Viber Team at the top, this is the boot priority, meaning to say when you boot out the system, it will boot to Linux. If you want it back to Windows, you just need to pull this or drag this down to the second slot. So this is what I meant by boot priority. Now right at the top, you have this time as I show you. If you do click on it, right, you can set your time and date and such. Next will be the languages. You can select whatever language you want. Take for example, you want Japanese. See, all this will be in Japanese. Not all, but some. So right now I'm just going to set it English. Then for search, right, when you click on this, you can search, for example, a key function that you want to make use. For example, you want to do fan. Okay, fan profile, and then you click. See, it will list this for you. Either you control your fan, CPU fan, your chassis fan, and such. All this it can be done. Next will be the aura. I'll just highlight. You can go through, pause this, and take a look what this does. I'm not going to go in depth. Then followed by the resizable bar, which is meant for your integrated graphic card. So we can set either to enable or disable. As you can see, right now it's actually on by default. Always keep it on. Okay, this is needed to speed up the whole process. Now, all this that I've highlighted using the mouse, right, you can also use keyboard, which is like for search, you can press the F9. Okay, it will bring you to the search. And for escape key, of course, bring you back to the menu. At the bottom over here where you have Q dash, insert, default, save and exit and such, right? This I need not have to explain. This I believe you understand what they are. Especially except for the Q dashboard, when you click on this, right, it will bring you the overall layout of the motherboard and what is being populated. It will tell you. See, those are in green, and the CPU, and the fan, and the memory. And when you're clicking to this, right, as in like when you highlight to whatever is populated on the motherboard, let's say for example RAM, if you click on it, right, it will take you to the RAM section where you can take action and such. Okay, one thing I wish Asus would do, right, when you click on escape, right, from the Q dash, right, it will bring you back to this instead of, okay, take a look. If I were to click on memory, it will take me to where it's supposed for me to configure things on your RAMs. But for going back to the dashboard, when you press on escape, right, see, it doesn't. It goes to this menu here. So I hope that you guys will actually do something about this. Same goes to, let's see, CPU pen, I guess. Yep. Now you press on escape. See, it doesn't bring you back to the Q dash. Now as for default, this is meant for you to, let's say you set all the stuff like your fan curve, your boot priority and such. You want to revert back to the default settings, you just press on default or press on F5. Then save and exit. I don't have to explain. Advanced mode, okay, this is whereby I will show you more details of what you can do to tune the system. It's either you click on here or click on F7, and this is the advanced mode function. Mainly people, what they'll do is, okay, let's start with our favorite. These are the permanent favorite area where you can set things like the PBO2 settings, sorry, like the expo profile, the PBO2 and such. But this is up to you. I'll just briefly go through. Okay, next will be under main. This is to share the information of what you have populated in your system, as mentioned in easy mode, to show your motherboard, BIOS, your processor, your RAMs and such. Now coming to the AI tweaker, this is often used to set your expo profile on your memory. So you can set to expo profile 1, you can set on 2 and such. Now for this expo tweak and the expo on the fly, right, especially on the fly, this is meant for you to control the RAMs in Ryzen Master in Windows, whereby you don't have to reboot. You will just take the readings from there. At the moment, I'll just set it to expo. Now when you enable expo profile, right, these are the profile that you can select. Sometimes it's more, but right now it's only this, so I just leave it be. Then the rest you can just set as per accordingly, right? Or you can set the CPU ratio, okay? Or you can set per core CCD, I mean the B core settings, or the ratio. It's all up to you. Now, things that I will play with on this AI tweaker is basically expo, enabling expo. Then next thing I will do is the RAMs. Go to the DRAM timing control, where you can see this. These are the menu setting. You can play with it if you want to, but for me, I'll just leave it at expo, everything intact, not changing it. But I will change this, which is under uClock diff. Okay, this is the one, uClock diff 1 mode. This is whereby you have game mode 1 and game mode 2. So it depends on how much your RAMs is able to perform. And if you select to game mode 1, right, it will boost up even higher when you play your games to achieve higher FPS. Or you can set it game 2. Okay, I'll just set it game 1, not so greedy. Then other things that I'll play with, right, I will play with the precision boost overdrive over here. Now take note, this is under AI tweaker, and on advanced mode, right, they do have a AMD overclocking, which is same as what you see on the AI tweaker. Okay, but the difference is I will not use this AMD overclock to do the precision boost overdrive. Okay, just to show you. Reason being, right, if I were to do it here, right, it's very manual work. Okay, I have to set the PBO2, PBO limits manually, and the rating is milliwatt. So assuming you want to pump PBT at 200, okay, 200 watt, but over here, right, you can't just put 200 watt, you have to put 200,000 watt, because this is a milliwatt. So I don't usually use this at all. Okay, bring it back to auto. Instead, I use under AI tweaker precision overdrive. And why am I using this? Based on the fact that for precision boost overdrive, right, you have this selection over here where you have two additional menu, which is the enhancement and the AMD echo mode. If you're using echo mode, right, that means to say in safe mode, but it still will perform. You can try this out. It draw lesser power, and it will it will perform and sustain the clock speed, default clock speed of the processor that you're using. For enhancement mode, right, when you click on this, it gives you 3 profile. So that it's telling the system, hey, please do not make this system go beyond 90 degrees Celsius. Meaning you say at this 90 degrees Celsius cap, right, the system will pull whatever cooling solution that you provided, and it doesn't reach 90 degrees Celsius. So assuming that, let's say it's running at 5, default is 4.7, and you set it this way, right, meaning you say it will pull at probably 5.4 gig consistently, okay, at this temperature. And if you were to set at 80 degrees, right, meaning you say you tell the system that, hey, look, do not pull above 80. Since 90 is able to do 5.5 or 5.4 gig consistently, right, at 80 degrees, right, you will pull down lesser. Probably you can set a consistent speed of 5.2 or 5.3. Then when you lower down again, you will go 5.1 or 5.2. Okay, this is what it meant. Now, oops. If you want manual, challenging way of doing PBO2 like myself, I will go to manual, then set this PBT, EDC and TDC according to the wattage. As mentioned to you earlier on the advanced mode where you have the precision boost overdrive, right, that you have to set 200,000 in order to run the wattage. But over here you can, over here you can set 200 straight. You don't have to put the additional 3 zeros. So you can set this, probably I will say 192 or whatever that you try to set. Okay, right now I'm just going to put 0. Now, as usual, the favorite thing that I will do is performance thermal throttle limit. I will not exceed 85 when I set manual, 85 degrees. When you say anything at 85, right, you will just stop there and you will not pull any further. So this is actually what it meant. Now, often people play with PBO2, right, is on the curve optimizer, where you can set either all cores or manual core. For me, I'll set it to all cores, and always at a negative value, not a positive. Positive, you will pull lots more current as compared to negative. So negative, right, what it does is it will just pull lesser current. Then for magnitude, I can set it to max -30, which is -30. In fact, if you can't boot stable on Windows, right, you will have to bring up the current to 20 or maybe 10. I would to advise to start with 30 first, boot up the system, make sure you run Cinebench on Windows and such, play some games, it is stable, it's alright. If not, bring this down to 25. If you can't, bring it down to 20. Okay, if you can't, bring it down to 15 and such. So this is how I play with the PBO2. Now, back to the section. The rest of this, right, I will not touch unless you're challenging enough to set the DRAM voltages and such. Right now the default is 1.45 volt, which is correct on my RAMs. Now, as for this core setting, right, the core voltage, you can also set offset, which I often do. I will set it to negative sign and having a 0.05 volt. Okay, most of the time it will work. Meaning to say, instead of having the default to draw at 1.35 volt of the processor, right, from the processor, the processor will pull default at 1.35, and to run it, probably I would say, after you set the PBO2 and such, I would say to run at 5.2 gig. Now, it doesn't require default 1.35, so you can set the offset. So by doing this, right, what it does is instead of using 1.35, it will calculate down and might just pull 1.2 volt just to have the clock speed at 5.2 gig. Okay, this is what it meant. So the rest I will not go through. You probably, more challenging for those overclockers. These are the functions that you can do. Even memory voltage you can set. Okay, now back to the main. Next will be advanced mode, where you have all this trust computing, etc. These are the security stuff which I don't touch. AMD FTPM configuration. Now by default, this is enabled for you to install Windows 11. If you choose to disable, right, you can disable over here. Okay. Now, speaking of this, right, do not disable this, alright? This is whereby if you to change your processor to a better processor, let's say for example you're placing a 9700X and you bought a new one which is 9950X, you will need to clear off the old memory settings on the processor on your motherboard and to reevaluate or verify the new processor. So have this, okay, the erase FTPM, right? Correct. To default so that it will recognize it. So these are things that you can do. Next will be UEFI variable protection. I wouldn't have a clue what this is. Probably to set a password so that, you know, people won't touch your UEFI, I guess. Next will be CPU configuration. These are the settings that you can do. Setting all this to disable or enable. Now PCI system subsystem. This is where you do the resizable bar on your integrated graphic card. Okay, by default the above 4G decoding is enabled and the resizable bar support is enabled, so you don't really have to touch this. Followed by USB configuration. You can either disable them or enable them. It's all up to you. Next will be the network stack configuration. This you can set enable, disable. As for the main function, I wouldn't have a clue. NVMe configuration. Now right now I have not populated any NVMe, but what it does is when you click on this, right, it will show you what are the NVMe that you have plugged in, or should I say the M.2. Hard disk information. Now this has a very good mechanism. If you have populated any SSD or hard disk, right, when you click on this, right, it will tell you how well your system fared with this value. Okay, so that it will prompt you whether to change your hard disk or not. Alright, SATA configuration. Now there is a function for hot swap, as in like while your system is on you can pull out your SSD and such, but make sure you come to this UEFI. Okay, notify which SATA you plug in. Alright, for example this is plugged in. Make sure that the hot plug is enabled. So when you enable this, right, and you save the profile, when you boot to Windows, right, that particular SATA drive, you have to eject out from Windows and you can unplug it directly, or to plug it back directly. So this is what it meant by hot plug. So make sure this is enabled if you want to do that when the system is, you know, when the system is running. If not, you can follow the traditional way, shut down the machine and to unplug the SATA connectors off from your SSD or your hard disk. APM configuration, advanced power management system. This is one thing that I often use, as I use remote control to turn on my PC using my smartphone. So normally I'll set this power on by PCI-E to enable. Okay, then other than that, okay, onboard device configuration, you can disable or enable certain things like, I'm using an audio interface. I don't use the onboard audio. I can just disable this. Or if you don't use Bluetooth, you can disable this. Things like that. Alright. Then the rest I will not go through. Now, why am I setting all this over here as disable and such? Believe me, if you're not using the onboard audio and you're using an audio interface like me, right, if you disable that and some of the connection like the Bluetooth that I don't use, right, I'll disable them. This will allow your system to boot up faster. Okay, instead of going through the whole process as in like, you will detect whether you have a onboard audio and such. So this will speed up. The rest I will not talk into it. Okay, probably North bridge configuration, where you can set your priority of your boot GPU is either integrated or this is integrated, or this is the built-in graphic card on your processor. You either boot that or you can select to integrated, but most of the time I think it's going to be silly if you have an integrated and you do select the inbuilt. So just leave it as PCI-E video. The rest I will not cover. Next will be monitor, whereby you have the choice of looking at what your temperature of your CPU, your motherboard is. So this is showing you everything. Okay, your CPU, your motherboard, your chipset, your RAMs. Next will be fan speed monitor. Now, since my system right now is only plugged to the air cooler, you only have one reading. If you populate all, right, as in like the chassis fan one header all the way to 4 and the AIO pump, right, it will show over here. Followed by the voltage monitor. It will show you how healthy your PSU is to supply power, where you have the CPU core voltage, the 12 volt rail, the 5 volt rail, 3.3 volt rail, and etc. Q fan configuration. Now this is the part whereby you can do your fan curve, and it's split into 3 parts. First of all, you can auto tune the fan. As in like whatever you plug in, right, you can click on this, it will just auto tune, and to adjust the cooling that is necessary. But for me, I wouldn't use this. The first section you see here, right, this is the first section. This is your CPU fan. Set it to PWM mode. Then you can either use the profile, okay, set it turbo, full, and whatsoever. I will normally set it turbo, or you can set it manual, where you have to configure the points over here. Now we'll go into details, but these are the things that you can do with. But normally I'll set it to turbo. Okay, and some of you find that turbo is too noisy. By default, it's running at that RPM, so you'll set it to silent. Okay. Now, next will be how low your fan gonna be when you boot up, or should I say, not doing anything. I will set it at 400. Okay, default is 200. Then next section, before I go to the chassis fan, right, the next section, which is the pump, I would advise set this to PWM mode full. Okay, do not do anything else, just leave it this way. Or you can do it manually, where you set this to 80% to all. Okay, as in like 80%, 80%. Okay, wait, oops. Wow, so many AI points. Okay. Yeah, probably I would set it all to 80%. It takes times to feather this, but at all times, right, I would do this full speed, as I want my pump to run consistent, not fluctuating. Because the more you do fluctuation on your pump, right, the more wear and tear it will be. So take on this. Now the final thing, which is your chassis fan configuration, where you have chassis 1 to 3. See, this is 1, 2, and 3. Again, this you can set your own curve, setting the chassis fan 1 to PWM mode. You can set standard, turbo, etc. It's all up to you, or even set manual. And again, all this you can set yourself. Alright, next will be boot. Okay, this I will ignore. CSM, these are for legacy device. I will not do this. Secure boot, whether you want to enable or disable. This I will set it to this, standard. Now, for those of you actually playing Valorant, you will need to set this as custom, because without custom, right, Valorant will not run. Then you have the boot priority. As I show you on easy mode, you can toggle. Okay. Then the rest is just to, okay, let's say you are over here and you just want to boot directly to Linux or such. You can just select and click and you boot. Now for tools, Easy Flash, this is meant for you to update your BIOS, which is on this UEFI interface. Meaning you say you download your BIOS in the thumb drive, plug it anywhere behind your motherboard rear I/O, any of the type A port, then you can do this flash. Or you can set this as enabled to have a bio image rollback support. Meaning you say while you are doing the flashing, right, it will do a backup copy of your previous BIOS version. Then the rest, I won't say much. Now for Asus Secure Erase, this you're able to erase your M.2 SN9 back to the original settings, but I would advise you to avoid that. Make use of the M.2 application to do the wipe instead of using the secure erase from the UEFI. Now, BIOS queue dashboard, as mentioned to you, this will show. Then for user profile, let's say you set all the configuration, you want to save it, you can save. These are the profile that you can save. You just need to name it and save it to which profile. Okay, the rest. Okay, Asus SPD F info, this is meant for the RAMs to show you what is populated and such. Okay, see, it will show you. Now, Asus my hotkey. This is interesting. Oh, setting hotkeys on your UEFI. So whether to have it when you press F3, right, it will boot during UEFI time, right, you will boot to flash drive, or you can select either of this. I'll just leave it as normal. Okay, Asus driver hub. This is very important for the very first time when you install Windows. Set this to enable. Okay, what it means is that when you freshly install Windows in this system itself, when you boot up, for the very first time, it will prompt you to download all the relevant drivers and chipset of this motherboard. If you don't do that, right, if you don't do this, right, you will have to go to the website and manually download all the drivers and to install it yourself. So this will save heaps of time. As for it, these are self-explainable. My thoughts about this Asus Tuf Gaming B850M plus Wi-Fi, I'll break them down and to explain. But before I do so, I have missed out some points during the connection orientation. There are two 4-pin PWM fan connector at the rear and at the front. So there are a total of 2 which I missed out. And inclusive of the debug LED code over here, which I missed out too. This is whereby if you boot the system and there are some error detection, right, it will just show you the LEDs over here, which is amber, green, or even red, which indicates the VRM problem, the CPU problem, sorry, the RAM problem, the CPU problem, or the graphic problem, or even having difficulties to boot. So I missed out on this. Now back to where I was talking about the fan connectors, right, where you have this two which I missed out. The layout, fantastic. Reason being, right, for your air cooler or for your radiator pump, right, you have this headers over here. Okay, this is for the pump, this is for your air cooler fan or the radiator fan, and this is for push-pull configuration. And at the front of the chassis where you have fans, or at the side of the chassis, right, you can plug that header to this. Then at the bottom, you can plug to this. And for the rear, you can plug to this. All have the very good location of the fan orientation, be it the front fan, the top fan, the bottom fans, and the rear fan. All nicely done. Second of all, I've not talked about the design of this motherboard till right now. I have a reason for it. Looking at the design, right, it's very nicely done. It's sleek, stealth black. No ARGB nonsense. Now, especially for ARGB, if there are ARGB underneath all this PCB or under the M.2 and such, right, it will generate a small amount of heat. So that's a bonus point. No ARGB, but it does give you this 3 ARGB connectors. If you fancy your, additional strips, additional ARGB devices and such, you can make use of this, especially for the fans. So that's good. Now back to this design here. All this are fully made of aluminium. The VRM heatsink and the M.2 shield, or should I say the M.2 heatsink. Especially on the VRM, I appreciate very much on how they improve on this, which you will not find on the previous B650M. Why do I say so? Kudos to them. Take a look at the rear VRM heatsink. This is where the VRM are seated, so it will just absorb through this bar and dissipate through this pillar. And this pillar, right, it does have fins at the side, so this will dissipate heat much more, And if it doesn't, right, it will transfer to the top where you have this whole piece here, which is flat, and it's a very big surface area. So with the absorption of this, right, you will dissipate more heat. It's just like a concept of having a cup and a plate. This, in fact, is a plate. If you're having a cup, right, where you have thick VRM block, aluminum block, right, that will dissipate heat pretty bad. Take for example, if you pour hot water in a cup and you pour hot water on a plate and you let it cool down by itself, which will cool down faster? Definitely the plate, as it has bigger surface area compared to the cup. So same concept coming to the rear heatsink. This is flat and this is of its whole surface area. Same goes to the side VRM. See, the heat dissipation is going up, and at the side of this VRM heatsink, right, there are fins stacked, and this will dissipate heat much more. And as I've tested this unit running a side Cinebench, right, when I touch my hands on this, okay, these are ATM choke capacitors or such. When you run my 9950X, it runs cool. I can place my fingers on it, and mind you, room temperature 30.6 degrees Celsius. This is normal in my room, okay? As I'm coming from a hot and humid country, no aircon is being supplied. As you can see, right, I'm perspiring. Okay, so this is a good point. Strong VRM heatsink dissipation of heat is extremely good. Now next, the dim slot over here, nicely colored. Where this run dual channel, as I mentioned, it has the indication of the first dual channel as gray and the second dual channel as blank. Reinforcement on the GPU bracket, or should I say the PCI-E socket, nicely done. And they remove off the clip that clips onto your GPU, which is good too, as they have implemented this locking mechanism. See, nicely done. Whereas for the previous Tuf, which is the B850M, right, you still need to dig your fingers to release the cache that is near the slot in order for you to remove the graphic card. This comes in very handy. Alright. Now, something on the negative side. This board itself, sad to say that it does not have a USB version 4 port. Normally for the X870, right, the Type-C, you have two 40 gig, which is the USB 4 port, but this does not have it. Next will be the M.2. First thing, I like how they designed the M.2 slot, where you have this Q latch at the back of each slot, be it the first, second, or third. So to plug in your M.2, you just plug it in, put in place, and this will lock in place. If you want to release, just press this down and your M.2 will be released. All the armor shield on the M.2 are sufficient if you populate generation 4 M.2. The only concern that you need to take care of is the top slot, whereby this is the only slot that allows you to plug in a Gen 5 M.2. And Gen 5 M.2 does generate more heat as compared to Gen 4. And what's concerning is this heatsink over here. It might be not enough to cool it down. So when you are plugging the Gen 5 M.2, right, that most of them come with their original heatsink, make use of that heatsink because it's thicker and it has more fin stack to dissipate heat from the Gen 5 M.2. Now, what is this board for and who is it for? I would say that if you are a pure gamer and thus like streaming and like content creation, right, this board will be for you, based on the fact that this board does not have the USB 4 Type-C port that does high transfer rate. So if you are on the light side and a gamer, this is meant for you, and there are plenty of storage for you. But if you are a content creator and a heavy 3D animator, or even a compiler on certain programs that need high transfer rate, right, this board will not be for you. As mentioned, the lack of the 40 gig port, which is the USB 4 Type-C port, and based on the fact that you might need more than one Gen 5 M.2, which this only have one. So that might not be for you. Overall, I say that this design has improved a lot over the past generation, especially on the M.2, whereby the previous generation, right, you only have 2. This you have 3. And best part, it does include the Gen 5 M.2 slot. And inclusive of the rear, there are tons of USB Type A. You will never go without it. Overall, it's a pleasant experience with this board, and I believe this is of a budget board because I don't have the MSRP or such. With this said, I'd like to thank Asus Singapore to have provided this board for me to share with everyone. And for those of you who are actually new to my channel, welcome to my channel. If you like my content, do remember to subscribe and to click on the notification bell button. Till then, take care, goodbye, see ya.